Welcome to Adult ypww, Lesson 6. I do not own the rights to this music. Our lesson text is coming out of 1 Samuel chapter 30, verses 1 through 8. Today's topic is change clothes. 1 Samuel chapter 30, verses 1 through 8. This is the King James Version. And it came to pass, when David and his men were come to Ziklag on the third day, that the Amalekites had invaded the south, and Ziklag, and smitten Ziklag, and burned it with fire, and had taken the women captives that were therein. They slew not any, either great or small, but carried them away, and went on their way. So David and his men came to the city, and behold, it was burned with fire, and their wives and their sons and their daughters were taken captives. Then David and the people that were with him lifted up their voice and wept, until they had no more power to weep. And David's two wives were taken captives, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail the wife of Nabal the Carmelite. And David was greatly distressed, for the people spake of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved, every man for his sons and for his daughters. But David encouraged himself in the Lord his God. And David said to Abiathar the priest, Ahimelech's son, I pray thee, bring me hither the ephod. And Abiathar brought thither the ephod to David. And David inquired at the Lord, saying, Shall I pursue after this troop? Shall I overtake them? And he answered him, Pursue, for thou shalt surely overtake them, and without fail recover all. The aim of this lesson is to highlight the necessity of changing clothes when dealing with discouragement. The memory verse for today's lesson. I will read the King James Version first, and then the New International Version of Isaiah chapter 61, verse 3. To appoint unto them that mourn in Zion, to give unto them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he might be glorified. The New International Version. And provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. They will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor. The introduction says, this may not sound like a big deal to you, but it is. What David did here is not an insignificant act. After he cried and encouraged himself in the Lord, he asked the priest to bring him the ephod, and that's 1 Samuel chapter 30, verse 7. What is so significant about this is that the ephod was a priestly garment. David was not a priest. At this point in his life, he was not a priest or a king, but as a type of Jesus Christ, who was both priest and king. David was permitted to wear this garment with impunity. The fact that David wanted to wear this garment suggests that he wanted to change clothes. He wanted to get out of his garments and get into the priestly garment. If you read 1 Samuel chapter 30, verse 8, you will learn that he is about to go before God in prayer. It is apparent that he did not want to go before God in an improper way. He wanted to approach God properly. One outstanding thing about David is that he was a worshiper. He loved to worship God. He knew something about the power of praise and worship. He knew that the sacrifice of praise was greater than the sacrifice of animals. Putting on the linen ephod suggests that he was preparing to offer God a sacrifice of praise. The discussion says, read 2 Samuel chapter 6, verse 14. That reads, 2 Samuel chapter 6, verse 14. And David danced before the Lord with all his might, and David was girded with the linen ephod. When David finally became king, the first official act of his administration was to return the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem. When he did this, he wore a linen ephod. He wore this priestly garment, and do you know what he did in it? He danced before the Lord. Dance is a form of praise and worship. So David praised and worshiped God in clothing originally designed for the priest. Now you may be wondering what all this has to do with overcoming discouragement. Well, if you are going to overcome discouragement, you are going to have to do what David did. You are going to have to change clothes. David put on the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. This is exactly what you need to do. Whenever you feel discouraged, change clothes. Put on a different garment. 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 5 says that you are a holy priesthood. 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 9 says that you are a royal priesthood. Revelation chapter 1 verses 5 and 6 says that Jesus has made you kings and priests unto God. So put on your priestly garments. Put on your beautiful garments. Put on the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness or discouragement. The application says, how do you do this on a practical basis? Interestingly, many choirs wear choir robes to sing. It is also interesting to note that in Revelation chapter 7 verse 9, John saw a number that no man could number, and they were all clothed with white robes and palms in their hands. They were crying or shouting out with a loud voice, saying, Salvation to our God, which sitteth upon the throne, and unto the Lamb. Changing clothes, however, is not a matter of getting you a choir robe. When you are discouraged, clothe yourself with praise. Put some praise music on. Don't listen to blues music or music that makes you feel blue. Put on some praise music. Listen to music that will make you feel good. Listen to music that makes you want to thank, praise, and worship God. Listen to some music that makes you want to clap your hands, stomp your feet, and leap for joy. Isaiah chapter 61 verse 3 does not say to put on the garment of rhythm and blues, or the garment of rap, or the garment of jazz. No, it says put on the garment of praise. In what kind of music are you clothing yourself? What kind of music do you put on when you need a spiritual lift? Put on gospel music. Put on the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. The Dake's Annotated Bible explains it this way: a garment expressing praise and gratitude instead of mourning and a spirit of heaviness or a burdened spirit. Lesson illustration. There is a psalm that illustrates this point. Psalms chapter 33 verse 1. Rejoice in the Lord, O ye righteous, for praise is comely for the upright. The word comely means fitting or suitable. It also means beautiful. So praise is a garment that is fitting or suitable for you. It is a garment that is beautiful or looks good on you. So the next time you get discouraged, rejoice. Give God praise because praise looks good on you. As a child of God, you don't look good mumbling, grumbling, or complaining. You don't look good pouting. You look good shouting. You look good dancing. You look good rejoicing. You look good thanking and praising your God. The questions for today's lesson, and you can search the scriptures on your own. Question 1. Do you remember going to the gym in grade school or middle school? What was the difference in the way you dressed when you took gym classes in high school? Why was this the case? And how might this explain why David wanted to change clothes? Question 2. Read Revelation chapter 7, verse 9. How were the worshipers in this verse attired? Does this give any insight into the attire of choirs today? What implications might this have for regular worshipers today? Question 3. What does it mean to put on the garment of praise? How does one do that? I'm going to repeat question 2. Read Revelation chapter 7, verse 9. How were the worshipers in this verse attired? Does this give any insight into the attire of choirs today? And what implications might this have for regular worshipers today? The end. God bless you and thank you for joining me today.